We're inside our studio. We're inside the project we've been working on. Mine is called student folder. Yours should be called whatever you named your folder. We're here at a place, a level 1 heading called section 2. The outcomes for this section of the assignment is to interpret a histogram and to interpret a box plot. So these are plots, of course, that we're going to make with our data, and then there will be some questions you have to answer, so that's what this part is for. So again, you're making a little data frame called section 2 answers, and you're going to save your answers inside this data frame. So that's what's happening here. We've done it before. You can just run this code, and when the time comes to answer questions, you're going to save it in that data frame. So onto this heading, it says histograms. So we're going to run this code together. This code will make histograms for us, or will make a histogram for us at the these lines, and then after that you're going to draw your own histogram with some different instructions. So this is a package called ggplot2. Remember I said packages, that's like a collection of functions that do very specific things, and this ggplot2 package is one of the most used ones in R, and it's an absolutely amazing package for drawing plots. So it's a collection of functions that together is just really useful for making plots. So that's the package we're using, and so these two lines produce a plot. So it is a little bit hard to understand what's going on here at the start, and I'm not actually going to explain it to you because that is a whole course by itself for someone who isn't familiar with R. Once you know R a little bit and you know your way around it a little bit, it's not difficult to learn ggplot. But for many of you guys who's never seen R before, this will take a lot of time to explain this code to you. So I'm not going to explain in depth what's going on. I'm just going to show the important parts to you. So ggplot is sort of the main function, and then in the specific syntax for this package uses plus signs. So this is basically it creates plots in layers. So that's the principle of this package. So if you've worked with software like Photoshop or any graphical software that also works with layers before, then you'll understand this a bit better. But that's the principle. And if you're interested, there are many videos on the internet explaining ggplot2 things, so you can easily find videos that explain to you what's going on. But that's what the plus sign is for. So every time you're going to add a layer to your plot, you use a plus sign. So that's why that is there. And then so that's a first function. This geom_point is another function. So basically ggplot, this function, creates a basic graph, but it doesn't have, it sort of creates almost like an empty graph, like a framework for a graph. And then by adding this geom_point, you tell it what kind of graph you want to create. So if I run this line of code, it's probably going to be easier to explain then. So this line of code produced this plot. And so that should be obvious then that we said we want points. Geom_point, we use geom_point, and so we created a graph that uses points on the graph. You can see here, there's an argument that says data, so obviously we had to tell R which data to use to make a graph. So that's not a strange argument. We say data equals my sample. That's your sample that you're using. Then there's this little bit of strange code, which AES is for aesthetic. So that's basically telling our what should be on the x-axis and what should be on the y-axis, if this is the kind of graph you're making. So that's what we're doing here. X equals ID. So ID is a column in my sample. And Y, for the y-axis, we said CRP null, and CRP null again is a column in my sample. And then we said, okay, that's the basics of the graph, plus sign to add another layer. That layer is basically the points. So R then plots all the corresponding points for those two variables. And this alpha, again, if you've used graphic software, you'll know that alpha always is for transparency. So if we didn't have this, these points would have been solid. But like right now, you see there's some overplotting over here. And that's why we use alpha, because if points lie on top of each other, we wouldn't know. We wouldn't be able to see that if they're all solid. But if you make them a little bit transparent, you can see there, oh, there's some, two on top of each other.